Breaking news moments ago as we look at President Trump's post on Truth Social right there. He says, I've just been informed by our great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz. The president then reveals there were two pilots involved, both safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must of necessity respond to this attack. That's from President Trump revealing what happened with that Apache helicopter there over the Strait of Hormuz. So let's bring in CBS News national security analyst Aaron McLean. Aaron, you see what the president said there at the end of the statement, the United States must respond. How do you read that?
Well, of course, the president's right. Something like this can't go unanswered, and I don't think any country would fail to answer it. But the question is, what does that mean? What kind of response? The president has sort of flirted with the red line in the last few weeks that it's actually the death of an American that would cause him to resume major combat operations with Iran. Well, amazingly, perhaps miraculously, but certainly we're all grateful that these two crew members came out of the water alive through that amazing drone boat rescue. So we'll see how the president calibrates his response. Will it be a major strike against major Iranian assets, or will it be something much more limited and a sort of gesture? We don't know yet.
So let's play that out. Major strike, but then he's got to be aware that any upset there in the Strait of Hormuz, where likely some of this firepower originated, would definitely be stirring up in a rat's nest, no?
Absolutely. And so even a limited strike from the American side, you could easily see it entering a kind of cycle of escalation with the Iranians. Now, some would argue that the Iranians are behaving with such recklessness right now that there's not much hope for a good faith diplomatic process going forward. And so you should respond massively in order to restore deterrence. Others would be concerned about that escalation cycle. By the way, I think the second bucket includes the president. He's been pretty clear that he wants to pursue this diplomatic route, that he does not want to return to the level of violence we saw in March and early April. And so, you know, if I were a betting man, I would bet on something more limited. His critics might suggest that those limitations are themselves what's inspiring the Iranians to be quite so reckless and aggressive in return, because they're not concerned. They're not concerned about what's coming back to them.
Well, and there's also the big question about who, when the president, vice president, or anybody from the Trump administration gets Iran, so to speak, on the phone, who are they talking to at any given moment? The White House has said that leadership is so fractured over there. How do we know that this wasn't just one thing that was isolated to one faction of the Iranian voice, and that maybe those that they're dealing with have different perspectives and priorities altogether?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we don't know the precise details of the shoot down or who shot it or how they shot it down. Those details are all still to come, no doubt. But, you know, we have seen this phenomenon play out a few times here, really since the start of the so-called ceasefire, where there appear to be elements in Iranian politics, the speaker, Ghalibaf, the foreign minister, Iranchi, who it seems are more interested in some sort of diplomatic arrangement because it seems they're more concerned about the economic damage that's being done to their country, in particular from the blockade. Meanwhile, you have the IRGC, which is led by a man named Ahmed Vahidi, who seem to have much less interest in a deal. And you see IRGC units in the IRGC Navy occasionally playing a spoiler role down in the Strait of Hormuz. It's possible that this shootdown was the IRGC attempting to spoil a diplomatic arrangement. It's possible that it's all coordinated. We don't know right now, but I agree. It's sort of a puzzle inside of a puzzle in terms of what's driving things inside of Iran.
So as we await to see how the president chooses to respond to the fact that this Apache helicopter was shot down by the Iranians, how do we know that the Iranians aren't just running out the clock? They're watching our midterms, they're watching our economic response and how a lot of Americans really don't have a gut or a stomach for this war. How do we know they're not just running out the clock?
Oh, I think that's exactly what they're doing. I think delay, complexity, generating pain for the president and his coalition, trying to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel, as you saw over the weekend, demanding a ceasefire in Lebanon in order for talks to continue. I think you're exactly right. I think that's exactly what they're trying to do now. What President Trump will say in return is that he believes time is on his side. That is to say, he believes that the blockade on Iranian ports is causing such economic pain in a country, Iran, already pretty weakened economically going into this conflict, that actually it's the Iranians who will blink first. That is a question that we cannot answer. That is to say, we're just going to have to see in time what levels of pain are generated on both sides. I keep comparing it to this game of economic chicken. But there's always the option of a return to widespread violence, and certainly shooting down an American helicopter brings us closer to that possibility.
You know, while both sides wait to see which other side blinks, of course, there's a painful blink, and that is we've lost, 13 service members. Now we see that these 2 service members had to be rescued by a drone boat. Let's talk about that rescue. That definitely was a first of its kind, no?
Incredible, yes. Certainly a first of its kind for the United States. It's possible that things like this have happened up in the Black Sea, though I couldn't cite anything to you off the top of my head. It is certainly novel and certainly a first for the United States. Look, I mean, I think people in their daily lives look around and realize that drones, and AI are both playing increasing roles in everything, in business and recreation. So the way that war works is that technology that's pioneered out in the broader economy often comes home to have a role on the battlefield. And that's what you're seeing here. The battlefield is an increasingly automated place. It's increasingly a place driven by data and AI. And this drone boat, which is apparently made by this company called Saronic, which is a major vendor of these things to the Navy. I just saw that reported. Is part of a task force called Task Force 59, which belongs to Central Command. It's kind of an experimental unit focused on autonomy and artificial intelligence driven data work to give them a more complete picture of the battlefield and the ability to, they would say in military jargon, generate effects on different parts of the battlefield without actually sending personnel in. Looks like that's just what happened here. So, the future is now.
You know, I'm also thinking about messaging by the Iranian regime to its own people. Oftentimes, their messaging to their own people is a little bit different than to the world. And I did not see a big megaphone coming out from the Iranian regime about this. How do you read that? The fact that we didn't see this time claiming responsibility, claiming a major victory in this war.
Yeah, it's, we might speculate. I mean, this could be, in line with the premise of one of your earlier questions, which is this some faction? It's possible. It's possible that no one from on high gave this order. On the other hand, I would say that we see Iranians taking shots at American facilities pretty regularly. A lot of these ballistic missile retaliations, the ballistic missile strike retaliations that they've done firing at Gulf countries like Kuwait have targets that are in effect American bases. So it's not like they're really shy at taking these swings. They just haven't succeeded in killing any Americans so far during the course of the ceasefire. So it's a little opaque as to what actually happened on the Iranian side of things, and the Iranian decision-making and communications process does not appear to be a well-oiled machine at the moment. So I think you're right to highlight it as an interesting question, but like so many things about this incident, the details are still coming into focus.
Well, as President Trump says, the U.S. must respond to the downing of that Apache helicopter. It's great to talk to you. Aaron McLean, CBS News national security contributor, always helping us to walk a little taller and think a little clearer.